Every single person in existence. So it's not just a Christian thing, or it's not just a certain type of people thing. No, it's not life being happily ever after you've been converted. But get this, since the very day you were born, you have always been a target. We've always been a target from the very day we were born. Why? Because as humans, we possess something these demonic entities do not possess, and that is access to God's mercy. And so when you are reborn, now the adversary will have to revamp his strategy in order to target us and to bring us down ultimately. Everything that happens in the physical realm is really just a manifestation of its equivalent in the spiritual realm. You see, for example, people can detect that something is off, almost like danger is lurking somewhere. And people normally ascribe this to having a quote-unquote gut feeling. But what is happening is your soul is passing on information to you of what it's seeing in the spirit realm manifested. So yeah, that is one way of actually interacting with the spirit realm. But another applicable way that we do without realizing is through dreams. So when we sleep, our physical body sleep, but our souls do not sleep, believe it or not. And so as a result, what we dream of is really a manifestation of things happening in the spirit realm. Now, there's a lot of different types of dreams that will also will have to be covered at another time, individually as well. But basically, it's no accident when you see things happening in your dreams actually manifest in real life at a later date, or maybe it has already manifest in the past. And we know this. We even see it in the Bible with certain, dreamers like Daniel, most popular of all. So we know that this is a fact. Now, furthermore, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a dream where you're in the bed? In the dream, you're in the bed, the very bed that you are sleeping in currently. You're in that bed in the dream, and things are happening in that space where you're sleeping. So it's the same conditions. The room is the same, everything is the same, the bed is the same, and something is taking place. That is not just a dream. That is your very spirit being actually peeping into the literal spirit realm. And so you can see that is how the spirit realm actually looks, or at least part of it, the part that you're in. Now, the spirit realm has different sections, as I mentioned before, where different types of spirit beings exist and roam. Now, we know demons dwell in the underworld, as we call it. Some call it Hades. And you have the heaven that is above. That's where God and his angels reside. And finally, you have the middle ground, and that is here, the earth, but its spiritual equivalent. And so this is showing a literal application of how it is possible to not only invite God's presence from heaven here on earth, but also how demons can invade our space just the same, just from a different direction. And this also shows why we are called to be ambassadors of God, letting God's will be done here on earth. This is how it actually happens, because we, having souls, connect this earth to the heaven above. Spirit to spirit, and then the spirit to the physical. So now that's from a very vague geographical standpoint. Now, in terms of operational standpoint, the spirit realm operates by a judicial framework. What do I mean by that? With God being the supreme judge, let's use references here. God would be the supreme judge, and court is in session every single day, every single moment. Because what is the purpose of this court? these demons, as I mentioned earlier, they have an agenda against us. And so with every little thing, they want some legal right to persecute us. And they get this right by virtue of our actions. This is why they're spying on us 24/7 to see where we falter. And so once they see this, they then proceed to accuse us of our actions. This is why Satan literally means accuser. So Satan isn't necessarily referring to a single person, but a whole collection of beings that follow suit in accusing us of things so that they can get legal rights to have their way with us. And so they have to do all this hard work. Why? Because without it, they cannot, like, it's impossible for them to harm us in any way, shape, or form. They cannot. And if they even try, there will be serious repercussions for that, because they would not have any legal right to do so. Yeah, I understand that certain situations or certain things that happen in this life can be very unfortunate and, gruesome. And you may wonder, why does God allow these things to happen? Well, there's things that we're not seeing or we're not understanding, but there's some legal right that is attached to it happening. And so always remember that God is a just God at the end of the day. He will not allow things to happen that cannot happen legally. These are the entities that are against us, accusing us of every single thing possible. And because God is a just God, and this is a courtroom that's in session, the law is law. And so if these entities use the law against us, then God upholds the law and allows these demonic entities to do whatever they want. Well, it's normally confined to a certain line of action, as we saw with Job. But nevertheless, these entities would have gained the legal right to do these gruesome things. So it's not God doing these gruesome things. It's these demonic entities that would have accused us with the law. And so there is a legal implication behind it. And so this alone emphasizes the importance of being a child of God, from being converted from a sinner to be a child of God. Because if you don't, then you are exposed to anything that these demonic entities will try to attack you with, by virtue of them having the legal right to do so. And so this is the difference with a sinner and a child of God. A child of God has the opportunity, whenever they slip up or sin, just like the sinner, they have the opportunity to seek mediation on their behalf for their sins, because they are guilty. When they sin, they are guilty. No going around it. In the court that is in session in the spirit realm, they are guilty. But they have the opportunity to allow Christ to mediate on their behalf, which is the best lawyer one could have. And so, what does Christ do as our lawyer? He presents his case. So yes, there is a case against us that we would have sinned, and so we're deserving of a penalty. However, Christ comes and says, hey, based on the fact that he is my child, and also he is repentant of his sins, those conditions being satisfied, here is my sacrifice that I did on the cross, and these sins would have been covered by virtue of these conditions being covered. And so God, having been presented with both cases, would ultimately rule in the favor of the latter, and therefore have substantial grounds to throw out the case that is presented against us by these demonic entities. And so this is what the spirit realm looks like in terms of the court being in session. And so this is the difference between being a child of God and being a sinner. Because in this same courtroom, when you are a sinner, Yes, Christ could attempt to mediate on your behalf. However, the required conditions for the legal case to be favorable to you would not have been satisfied by virtue of you still being a sinner. But even still, the accusers can only do up to a certain limit that God allows. So bear that in mind. And so to wrap up, spiritual warfare is a very real thing, and it applies to not only believers but also unbelievers as well. It applies to all mankind because all mankind possess souls, and all souls is subject to spiritual warfare on different levels. And so having an understanding of these things should help you in navigating your way through the difficult time periods when it comes out to spiritual warfare, and ultimately navigate your way as you have your walk with Christ, and not forsake your walk with Christ with this understanding. And not having this understanding will only invite the adversary to target you further. He will bombard you and try to pressure you into relinquishing your relationship with God. And his ultimate end game, he wants you to lose hope in God and ultimately surrender your access to God's mercy, because he doesn't have it, and so he doesn't want you to have it either. And not only surrendering your access to God's mercy, but also surrender your inheritance to God's kingdom. So these things are very important to understand, and this is just a brief dive into the spirit realm. And so I hope that you will find this information helpful.